Update, Jade's ruining the vacations.
Anthony Barajas recorded that video days before he was shot to death while on a date with Rylee Goodrich at a movie theater. The man who murdered them has now learned his punishment, and the prosecutor who helped put him in prison is here. I'm Angenette Levy, and thanks for joining me for Crime Fix. Anthony Barajas was a charming TikTok star from Corona, California. On July 26, 2021, Anthony went on a date with Rylee Goodrich. They went to a 9:35 showing of the movie The Forever Purge. Rylee's father later told the Daily Mail that she was really excited to go on a date with Anthony, who had such a high profile on TikTok. During the movie, Joseph Jimenez Jr. shot Anthony and Rylee. Anthony was only 19 and Rylee just 18. Theater employees found them bleeding after the movie ended. Apparently, the sound of the movie muffled sounds of the gunshots. Anthony and Rylee were the only other people in the theater with Jimenez at the time. Anthony died days after the shooting after being placed on life support. Jimenez claimed to suffer from schizophrenia and admitted that he had stopped taking his medication before the shooting. He claimed he heard two voices instructing him to take two lives in exchange for his own. At his trial last December, Judge Timothy Hollenhorst found him guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder and found that Jimenez was sane when he killed both Anthony and Rylee. Judge Hollenhorst told Jimenez he was incapable of remorse and sentenced him to 2 life sentences in prison without parole. Rylee's grandfather and Anthony's mother spoke after the sentencing.
And her loss is not only a loss for our family, but I think it's a loss for humanity because she was destined to do wonderful things.
But we would ask that you guys would remember him in the way that we described him today, for his beautiful smile and for the way that he actually made a difference.
Anthony's family has started the Anthony Michael Barajas Foundation to spread acts of kindness in his memory. Joining me to discuss this incredibly sad case is someone who was handling it from the very beginning. He is the managing deputy district attorney for Riverside County. He's Kevin Beecham. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on. First of all, your thoughts on what the judge had to say to Joseph Jimenez earlier this week.
Yeah, it was very heartfelt. And I know it was a tough sentence for everyone, including the judge. But I feel that he acted appropriately, judiciously, and sentenced Mr. Jimenez to the just sentence.
Kevin, this is one of those cases that really just makes me shake my head because Anthony and Rylee, by all accounts, were just out on a date. They were doing what young people do. Rylee's father had told a media outlet that she was really excited to go on a date with somebody who was this big TikTok star, and they're sitting there watching a movie. They're doing what people do, and they're killed. I mean, it's beyond senseless. I don't even think that really conveys how awful this is. And these families are forever scarred. Can you explain to us what it's been like to handle this case from the very beginning and to deal with the families who are grieving and who will never be the same?
Yes, it was terrible. I was one of the call-out DAs when we got the news that this happened, and I was there when Mr. Jimenez was arrested. It was very horrific, sad to say the least, but it's a tragedy that should never have happened, and something that's so random that really affects the community, right? Because it's something that we would never suspect. There's no real motive behind it. And so this was a troubling case from the very beginning. And then meeting with both the victims' families, day of arraignment, all the way through to date of sentencing over the last few years, meeting them and consoling them and giving them basically the procedural aspect of what's going on in the criminal case, while at the same time trying to help them along the way as they're affected, as you can imagine, just so emotionally through their losses. So it was one of the more difficult cases for sure that we've had handled.
I saw that Rylee's grandparents spoke on her behalf, or on her family's behalf, in court on Monday for the sentencing. Apparently, her father and her mother were just, they couldn't do it. They were too upset to attend the hearing. At least that's what I was reading in some of the media reports. So that kind of shows you just how difficult this has been, with Rylee's parents losing their daughter, and the grandparents stepping in to come to court and address the court.
Yes, for sure. Rylee's father attended the arraignment, and he hadn't. This was all in open court and on the record, but he had an outburst, and he had to leave because of it, and understandably so. Right, I could understand where he's coming from, but it was something that was just too hard for them to hear the evidence and what had happened to their daughter.
I'm really excited to tell you that truthfinder.com is sponsoring this episode of Crime Fix. And honestly, with the cases that we cover and how long I've been doing this, I really can't think of a better website that can help you stay safe. Truthfinder is one of the largest public records search services in the world. Their goal is to help people like you learn the truth about the people in your lives. I have a young son, and I use Truthfinder every single time he goes over to a new house to look up his friend's parents. I've covered way too many stories about sex offenders and other criminals to know that you just can't be too careful. Truthfinder background checks these parents and finds any possible red flags. So here's how it works. You log on to truthfinder.com and type in the name of, let's say, a new or maybe semi-creepy neighbor, and within minutes, you get the scoop about who's living next door to you. You get access to reports that include information like phone numbers, addresses, previous arrests, criminal convictions, and even sex offender statuses. Also, because I'm addicted to the site, I did a background check on myself and my sister, and you can find out what someone would find when they run a background check on you. It's actually pretty shocking. So right now, you can get 50% off of confidential background reports. Just log on to www.truthfinder.com/LCCrimeFix and access information about almost anyone. Going through this trial, obviously, Joseph Jimenez Jr. opted for a bench trial, and the judge found him guilty, found that he was indeed responsible for what he did, that he was sane when he carried out these crimes, and but did find he suffered from schizophrenia. The judge told him that he didn't believe he felt any remorse. He didn't feel he was capable of feeling remorse. Did you have a similar opinion? And was there anything that you saw with looking at Joseph Jimenez through this process? Was there anything that you saw that made you feel the same way? Or did you think that he was sorry at all?
Well, what's interesting is he was evaluated by two psychologists. And in their testimony, they described how somebody with this level of schizophrenia probably does not feel the sense of remorse that we would think a normal person would feel. And what Mr. Jimenez had stated, he did give an apology during the sentencing, but and I think that the way it came across, it was very short and kind of to the point, but it's something that we saw throughout the trial and what the psychologists had testified to, that he may say certain things, but the way that he expresses, or the lack of expression, the lack of empathy that comes through whether it's his tone, his mannerisms, just doesn't come through due to his disorder. And I think that's what the judge was basing that off of.
Interesting. So that's part of his condition, is that he may have like a flat affect where it doesn't appear that he is able to actually feel anything, or at least convey it.
Right. Correct.
Okay. That would make sense. Prosecuting this case, it sounds like it obviously was not a matter of who did this. It was one of those cases where it's called an affirmative defense. You know who did it.
Right.
And the defendant admits that they carried out the act. It was just whether or not he was legally culpable, which the judge found that he was. But prosecuting this case, I mean, it had to be very difficult, obviously emotionally, but just, for the community too. I mean, people should be able to go out to a movie theater in Riverside County and feel safe. And people should watch their children go out, teenagers on a date or out with friends and go to a movie theater and know that their kids are going to be safe. So are you hoping that this may send a message to the community at large for anybody who may be entertaining something like this, or just the community in general, for people who are your constituents who may be thinking, this is a really terrifying thing that took place?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so rare, and it really struck the heart of the community. What was said in the sentencing is that 600 people showed up for Anthony Barajas at the hospital. So, and he was a social media influencer, and he touched a lot of people. He had a direct effect on so many people. And for him and Rylee to go out on a date and just to go see a movie, and then for no reason, no real motive, but to get shot and killed, makes no sense. And so I'm hoping that people see this for what it really was. Is unfortunately it was one individual who had a disorder, and it was a rare event, and it was just unfortunate.
It was just it's a tragedy. It's awful, and this is what we can do as a society. And he's never going to get out of prison. He's been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus some additional years. So, Kevin Beecham, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you very much.
And that's it for this edition of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Until then, have a great night.